Let's just give it a test run. Let me hear you.
Hello, 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 hello!
Ooh. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Playpen. I'm Bubbles, your host, and how are y'all doing today? I am ecstatic right now. I am trying to kill two birds with one stone. By recording an episode of the podcast at the same time as recording it through the mic for Spotify. So hopefully we will be able to have the YouTube video up at the same time as this audio comes out on Spotify and everywhere you get your podcasts. So I'm looking forward to getting it done. And, I have a little bit of a technological ineptness in me, so I'm working on trying to make this all work in a way that's productive and helpful. So, bear with me while I work through the technological problems, because I am doing this by my lonesome, and I don't want to have to pay anybody, because people should be paid adequately for their work, and I do not have the funds. So, if it's a little janky, don't call me on it. Oh, man. Well, here in New England, everything is, it's turning orange and red out there. Fall is in full swing right now, fall isn't in full swing yet, but we are really getting very close to it, out here. The leaves outside are turning this really nice orange color, and, I couldn't be happier, because this is my favorite time of year. Me and my little sweater and my little cup of tea, fall is my favorite. Fall is also the time that I go and I do my yearly photographs at Gillette Castle State Park, which me and my partners are going to this weekend, to do our fall photos. We started this tradition a couple of years ago, and it was just me and my partner Foxy at the time. And now we both have partners that we can bring in with us. Hi Luna, hi Daddy. We will go and, have them also be in our photos for this year. And I'm looking forward to that. Gillette Castle State Park is, this really gorgeous mansion, in, I think it's East Haddam, Connecticut. But it's situated like on top of a hill. The house is built out of local limestone and stone from the Connecticut River, which the house is like right over top of. The house was originally called Seven Sisters, which is the top of the mountain, or it's the top of the hills that the house is situated on. And the person who built the house, or had the house built for them, his name was William Gillette. He's an actor who is known for portraying Sherlock Holmes on stage in the, I want to say maybe the 10s or the, early 20s. The house was finished in 1919. He had a train station in the house that, it wrapped around the piece of property. I have not been able to look inside of the house because COVID has really put a damper on exploring those things. I think they were doing construction last year around the time that I went. So hopefully they're open. Hopefully we can get in there, because I want to see what it looks like on the inside. The house does have a museum inside, about Mr. Gillette and all this really wonderful stuff. And there's also live actors, which I saw the last time I was there, and it was pretty cute. I can't be mad. It was pretty adorable. And the live actors were they stayed in character no matter what you said to them, and it was pretty spot on. I liked it. It was entertaining. It's also apparently I'm not the only person who really enjoys taking pictures there, because Gillette Castle is a popular spot for photos. So, I'm just a fan of that place because it gives off a really fun, earthy vibe. And I want to look inside, because I want to imagine what it would be like to host a really cool play party there. I can't even imagine a high protocol dinner at a mansion that's over 100 years old at this point. Mwah, chef's kiss, sounds immaculate. I'm in. And And I want to see the train station because there is a stop for the train station that's directly inside of the house. So I want to see it. Yes, I'm a history nerd if you haven't figured that out, and I like old places. Ah, man. So some quick notes before I jump into everything. This podcast will hopefully be posted every Friday. These videos will hopefully also come out every Friday. Mostly shooting for it to be posted by noon. I can't, promise that I'll be perfect at everything or be able to record every week, but I will at least give it a shot. Alongside that, on November 17th is the first meeting for the Blackberry Book Club. It's a book club exclusively for Black women and Black femmes to congregate and share our experiences with one another. It's truly a blessing to me and a golden opportunity to offer space for others to connect in a deeper way, especially when a lot of our experiences leave us feeling kind of isolated from one another. Our first book for the book club is called Trauma Stewardism. I will put a link in the description box of both of these. It is called Trauma Stewardism, an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. It is written by Laura Van Dernoot Lipsky with Connie Burke. This book, I've already kind of made my way through about half of it, and it is so helpful. The book was originally written with people in mental health in mind, so like therapists and professionals, but realistically the book is really good for anybody who is going through the experience of caring for other people in a traumatic situation, or just in general in life. It's very difficult to kind of remember ourselves in those moments, and this book is a great way of helping us remember ourselves in a way. I've kind of read through this book and felt like it was a great resource for self-centering and caring, even when it's hard, especially when you know other people need you. Black women and femmes are just often overextended. Like when it comes to us and caregiving, we almost always end up in those roles with our partners, our friends, our family. It becomes a lot for us to handle. And we're always lacking in the areas about, self-care and care receiving for ourselves. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to learn how to center our healing even when we're caring for others. And I wanted to start off strong and focus on ourselves while we created a healthy support network for one another. And hopefully the Blackberry Book Club will become a healthy space for me and friends like me to have time to connect with one another. The Blackberry Book Club is a group that is, again, exclusive for Black women and femmes. And when I say femme, I mean feminine identifying people. So very accepting of all people who are, LGBT, LGBT. Goodness gracious, I'm butchering my acronyms today, but that's all right. So we want everyone to feel comfortable. So things like transphobia are not welcome in that space. Things that feel exclusionary to people who are already marginalized enough as is. Just not what we need in the space. So hopefully we are catering to a group of people who are really looking to connect with one another. And that is my goal with the book club. So for more information about that, just keep listening. I will be posting little snippets here and there. I will also post an episode exclusively about this book at some point as we go through the book club, and as things progress, we will try to mix in a couple of episodes about what we're reading in the book club in here, just in case you feel like you're missing out on anything. So, okay, with all of this extra information taken care of, let's get into our main topic for today's episode. Weaponized incompetence. So when I say weaponized incompetence, what does that make you think? For me, when I first heard the phrase, I found myself being a little confused. How can you weaponize your incompetence and your ability to not, complete a task? Like, how are you able to do that? And what does that look like in a relationship with ourselves and our loved ones? And of course, because this is a kinky podcast, how does that present itself in kink and BDSM? Strategic or weaponized incompetence is a relatively new term, apparently, that was coined in a Wall Street Journal article titled "The Art of Showing Pure Incompetence at an Unwanted Task," and it was written by Jared Sandberg. There we go. The article is centered on people being purposefully obtuse in the workplace, and it also offers a very clear definition of strategic incompetence. This is a direct quote from the article. It says, "Strategic incompetence isn't about having a strategy that fails, but a failure that succeeds. It almost always works to deflect work one does not want to do without ever having to admit it." And I had to sit with that definition for a while. That was a pretty clear definition, but there was also a part of me that was just still like, but how? You know, like how do you get away from doing things you don't want to do? And how does this work? So, you know, that work client who bombards you with emails, but you can tell they haven't read any of your previous one, and they got you typing "per my last response" in that email. And we all know that's corporate speech for "did you read, asshole?" You know, that person, the coworker who, you know, you can't rely on to complete their half of a task, or does it so poorly that you don't feel like asking them for help again. I feel like we've all been there. And the boss who yells and screams at the copy machine, and until an intern runs in to handle the problem. They're all weaponizing incompetence, whether they are aware of it or not. If they had taken the time to read your email, if they had taken the time to put the full effort into that project, and if your boss had just spent 5 minutes reading the instructions that are on the printer, mostly, they'd be able to do the task without much difficulty. But it's not about them not knowing how. Simply put, weaponized incompetence is the art of avoiding undesirable tasks by pretending to be unable to do them. And honestly, blows my mind a little bit. So the question then becomes, how does this behavior present itself outside of your workplace and in your regular relationships? I was introduced to the term weaponized incompetence from a TikToker by the name of Pickle Plants. I always call her Pants, but her username is pickle_plants. Her real name is Christina, and she makes really good content about this and other types of manipulations. I almost said manipulative. Other types of manipulation in relationships, so you should definitely check out her content. Typically, her videos always start off in one of two ways. She's always stitching them. So she's not the person who has posted this couple or posted their business. They have posted them. Usually it's either a wife recording something she had to do to make sure her husband did a task properly, or to show how poorly he did that task, or it's the video is being made by a husband who is giggling about how hard it is to follow his wife's instructions on a very basic task. Almost always, these videos are met with laughter or jokes in the comments section. And I just, I have a couple of examples, and I'm going to read you a few comments from a video that Pickle Plants, Christina stitched on TikTok. For context on this particular video, this man's wife left him 2 Post-it notes filled with directions. She pre-portioned the oil, the seasoning, and the meat, and somehow, someway, he still managed to mess up the recipe by not separating the chicken before putting it into the crock pot. So in the video, you see him just kind of dump the meat directly from the package into the crock pot. The comment said, "The fact that she didn't need to tell you to put on the lid is a win. Marriage is teamwork. I don't expect my partner to know how to make himself food. My husband wouldn't have even tried to find the chicken in the fridge. He's helping his wife. This is what true love looks like." His wife also commented, and she said he just gets so confused about measurements and then remembering to plug in the crock pot that I felt like I needed to help him. And one of the last comments was, all of these women being pissy and calling him childish for needing instructions are bitches. Maybe they should get back to the kitchen if they want it done right. So, whether this particular video is a joke or not, I don't know. But all of the comments above were liked by the original creator and his wife, including that one about women being bitches for and calling him childish. You know, there were a lot of people in the comments calling him out on weaponized incompetence, and Christina also was tagged in this video numerous times. In my opinion, it blows my fucking mind that a grown man with children needs instructions like plug in the crock pot, pour all the pre-portioned spices into the crock pot. When it comes to men and weaponized incompetence, it's oftentimes a very quiet or subtle way of expressing their misogyny. And it's easy to pretend to be completely unable to cook for yourself, so much so that your wife takes all of the grunt work out of you preparing your own meal and write you a detailed list on how to put the items into the crock pot. I mean, Sister frosted the chicken for him. He didn't have to do anything. My mom wouldn't have even done that for me as a kid. My mom didn't defrost the chicken. I did. And if I didn't, and she told me to, I got my ass beat. Now, I'm not saying beat your partner's ass. We shouldn't be hitting kids either. But we were held accountable for not doing the task. And here, he still messed it up. She did everything that she could do to make sure he could do it right, and he just didn't do it. It's just sheer laziness that makes people believe that this is the way your marriages are supposed to work. Like, to me, this isn't love. This is using your wife as your mommy and having her take care of you like you're 12. And that's just unacceptable for any marriage, in my opinion. And again, this is just my opinion, so if that is your marriage style, don't get mad. Go on and keep doing what you do for you. No judgment here. To me, it also even becomes more egregious and like downright dangerous when a parent refuses to properly care for his children and instead ignores what's happening to them while they doze off or fuck around in another room in their house. Another TikTok video was posted by a woman who showed like the absolute carnage her husband allowed to take place right under his nose while she did the work of putting their other child down for a nap. You know, she goes into their bathroom. The sink is full of mouthwash and soap, almost to the point of overflowing. The floor is strewn with toys, water, garbage from the can. There's scissors and bleach and other items just kind of tossed around the house. Every item in the child's bedroom is covered in paint. Just finger paint everywhere. And the entire time, the father was in the other room while, you know, playing computer games while the 4-year-old ripped the house apart. Like, to me, that's unacceptable. All of this happened in the span of 90 minutes. She could not leave this adult man alone with his children for 90 minutes without him doing something absolutely unacceptable. And it is unacceptable that you cannot be trusted to watch your own children. And realistically, the message that behavior sends to your spouse is the same that your incompetent coworker is showing you. I cannot be trusted. This is the message. I cannot do a basic task, or I won't do a basic task on my own. And it's your job, not mine. Then it adds the layer because things like parenting and cooking are considered women's work, and it only adds to that misogynistic undertone of both of these situations. It's my wife's job to make me dinner, and it's my wife's job to put my kids to bed, and it's her job to also watch them and keep them from destroying the house we live in and ruining everything. I can't be bothered to babysit, and I'm putting big quotation marks around that, babysit my kids. The whole mentality is fucking trash, and I can't imagine staying in a relationship like this. Also, this is not to say that weaponized incompetence is something that's exclusive to men or they're the only people who do it, but it is more common and clear when men do this behavior. Any partner can weaponize incompetence. It's just that it seems to be something that men do not lose after adolescence, and they do it more frequently. And it is just it's very clear when a man is being incompetent intentionally. When it comes down to it, like in the kink and BDSM scene, there's also a lot of people who weaponize their incompetence to get what they want and to also keep the environment from changing in a ways that don't benefit them. I'm a service submissive, so I really enjoy caretaking for my partners and taking responsibility for menial tasks off their plate. You know, I'll clean their house for them. It's something I find joy in. But I've totally had partners who have weaponized their incompetence to get me to go above and beyond my level of comfort when it comes to serving. So I've left multiple short-term DS dynamics for this reason. I just can't do it. Perfect example. I met this guy. He seemed like he had it all together. You know, I was happy. He wasn't perfect, but like, who is? Because I'm not, you know. So I don't have super ridiculous expectations for anybody. The first time I went over, it was very fancy. I spent the night. The house was clean. He made me breakfast the next morning, and he boasted about how much he loved his kid, and it seems like things were good. I was happy with where things were headed, so eventually we got more involved, and I started doing some more tasks with him at his house. So I'd clean, I'd make him dinner, I'd help him the way I do with every single one of my DS relationships, and when they're service-oriented, and what I would do for any dom that I am seeing. He was eventually, like, he started having a hard time with keeping his daughter's room clean. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll help you out. She's 5. 5-year-olds have a habit of just kind of throwing everything everywhere. So I was like, no judgment. I get it. I went and I spent several hours cleaning her room. She was extremely happy. He was too. It felt good. And serving in general is a way of finding comfort for me. So I appreciate it best when partners do not take advantage of my caregiving nature. Unfortunately, it happens a lot, and it happened in this case too. Slowly but surely, he just stopped doing upkeep in his own house. I'd go over and see that he had left dishes that I didn't wash the week before when I was there. And every other dish in the house was just kind of piled up around them. He wouldn't clean his room. He wouldn't clean his bathroom. He wouldn't make his own bed. He wouldn't wash his own blankets. It was just bothering me, especially because then his house started smelling funky as hell, and I don't do smelly. So I was just kind of like, I also was trying to be sympathetic because I didn't want to immediately assume I was being taken advantage of. I'm like, well, maybe he's struggling with his mental health or something. So he said, yeah, he was struggling with his mental health and he was feeling depressed about a recent breakup. And, you know, I was trying to, you know, be supportive because he was saying he was having a hard time keeping it together. I was a little overwhelmed, but I was, you know, understanding. To me, mental health was important. And I was like, okay, well, I am committed to riding out this life storm with him to at least get to a better place. Plus, he told me that the things got done better and stayed clean longer when I did them. And unfortunately, because I'm a teeny weeny bit egotistical about my cleaning skills, I was like, he's right. So I agreed because he stroked my service sub ego. I won't lie about that. A month and a half went by, and I was literally slaving away a dude's house, like, once a week or over my weekends. I became the full-time entertainment for his kid. I played games with her. I brought over all of my child-friendly toys that I could think of, and I was, like, really exhausted from being, you know, service sub, plus mom, plus maid, plus personal chef. Especially while our DS and poly dynamic were just in the shits and I couldn't trust him, to be honest with me. So, one day he just messaged me, was like, I'm ready to move forward with my life and move forward with our DS stuff and all this other things. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it's not necessarily, I'm not sure how I feel about this. His cleaning habits just never got any better. He refused to do anything to keep up behind himself. And it really upset and bothered me. So, it just set me off. And what was the nail in the coffin for me was him refusing to buy garbage bags for his own house. And he was just letting the mess pour out of the garbage cans, pour onto the counter, whatever. And it was just like, yeah, I can't do it. I also coincidentally found out that day that he was cheating. So not only was he a nasty motherfucker, he was also a lying asshole. And he tried to gaslight me into feeling bad for him. He's just like, well, I only wanted to be with you because you were cute. And I'm just like, yeah, that's fun. I'm kind of done. And he's like, oh, well, you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, you can't gaslight me back into a relationship after you have lied to me. So, and there's something so goddamn irritating about being used and lied to and cheated on and then gaslit to believe it's your fault. Incompetent people use gaslighting the same way they weaponize their incompetence. You know, it's easier to blame other people than to take responsibility for your actions. And it's easier to get everyone to do things for you rather than doing it yourself by posing as completely incapable as an adult. But it's not just individual people who do this. Organizations do too. And I didn't notice it until I had my own experience. I won't I won't name any organizations outright just so we can keep the peace. But I have seen multiple kink organizations that are run intentionally incompetent to keep things from structurally changing. Whether it's about power or social status or money, I'm not sure, but it happens far too often for it to just be a coincidence. The truth is that a lot of organizations are strategic about who they bring in and for what. And it's not always based on skill level, especially when the positions are unpaid and volunteer based. I've seen these organizations bring in queer people, people of color, disabled people, and other marginalized groups of folks and into groups and into leadership for optics. And so it seems like they're progressive. They will also bring in like victims of abuse and consent violations in the community into the fold. So it seems like they care about these issues. And then at the end of it all, no change is actually going to get made. When I first discussed my consent violation, I had one organization similar to what I just described reach out to me. They seemed very concerned and asked if they could do a formal investigation to hold my abuser accountable. I didn't ask for this, but I also was just like, whatever, do what you want to do. I put it out there, hands off. They came back to me maybe a week or two later and said, hey, we're banning him for 2 years with resources. And I put big quotation marks around resources. I shrugged my shoulders and kind of just planned to move on, like whatever. Like I hadn't been to any of their events. I didn't feel very comfortable or safe going to events in the area I lived in. So I was like, whatever. It wasn't until maybe 6 months later when I was contacted by a former board member that I knew something was wrong with how they handled my consent violation investigation. Apparently, the board had neglected to tell the board member or tell me that a board member was sexually involved with my abuser and that they were allowed to participate in the discussion about my abuse and my abuser. And they were also allowed to advocate on behalf of my abuser, but they were not allowed to vote on the consequences. So they advocated that my abuser get a lesser punishment, even though I was not the only person he had harmed. And apparently he had harmed a lot of people, numerous people, to the point where you cannot count the number of people who have been abused by this man on one hand. And it's not a lot of he said, she said, or he made me uncomfortable. It's legitimate abusive behavior that if these things had been reported to the police, which I will talk about why kink people don't report to the police nearly as often, he would more than likely be in jail. And he has been brought up on charges multiple times. But how was I supposed to know that? As a fresh newbie to the area, newbie to the scene, I vetted him through the people that I knew. I got glowing reviews. So, of course, I'm just like, what just happened to me? And oh my God, look at all of these people who are having this experience. So now that I'm hearing that this organization mishandled my thing, I was even more upset because I hadn't even contacted them asking for help. And they used my abuse case as optics to make it seem like they cared about handling situations like this while also being shady as hell behind the scenes. So I reached out for answers and to ask for a proper reinvestigation, and I got met with total disrespect, like just ignorance, really. What do you want us to do about it? Was one of the things I was asked. I still see my abuser in public. You need to learn how to grow up and move on. It sucks, but... And I'm just like, okay. Also, one of my favorites was racial slurs aren't always meant to be hurtful. Maybe it's his kink to call you those. We don't kink shame. And I'm like, yes, but I was non-consensually referred to as something that made me uncomfortable and upset me. And when I brought it up to his attention, I was told to calm down. And now you are also doing the same thing. Again, when I never asked for you to get involved. Nonsense. So I was very appalled. I was angry. I was disgusted. But I also found out I was not the only person who had been treated this way by them. A lot of former organizations or a lot of former volunteers and board members had found themselves also experiencing things like this when it came down to different issues in the organization, and every effective change they suggested was botched badly or completely ignored. They would end up leaving or, just quitting after hearing how much they helped the organization with their volunteer work and service, but they still were not being heard. And realistically, this is the goal of organizational incompetence. You use people, you take all they have to offer, and then you change them out with fresher resources and fresh energy and new people. And if you're consistent about moving people out and quick about it, it's less likely for long-term issues in your organization to be seen and spoken about outside of it. So when it does happen, any of those former members who are speaking out, it's easy to just dismiss them as being angry or bitter about not being given any more power, and people eat that shit up. It's a horrible reality, but it is, and it's how structural. This is structural incompetence. It is a decision on behalf of the organization to run their shit as improperly as possible because it is convenient and because they don't have to care. In that situation, I spent a full month going back and forth via email with the team of this org. The entire time my emails were half read and complete and responded to incorrectly. And they were rude as hell over email. They just spent a lot of time trying to keep me from being able to properly document. I had requested that I be able to transcribe or record our meeting because they have been known to lie about what they say versus what they say they said versus what they actually said in a meeting. So I requested that I record. I did not get a response until 10 minutes before our meeting. And they said, yeah, you can get somebody to transcribe, but no recording. And I'm like, okay. So I had to go and find a random person in a random Facebook group, a non-kink person at that. And I offered them money so that they would sit and transcribe, and they were able to do it, but it was really short notice and I felt terrible about it. In this meeting, I found out that, they didn't offer those quote unquote resources that they had talked about giving. They didn't even check in with consent violators after they were banned, to see if they were working on the behavior or anything like that. So there was no real accountability. It's get out of our faces for 2 years and come back, after that, and then you're free to go. I found out that this organization is almost 30 years old and just does not have a consent violation reporting guideline. And during my meeting, I was offered a copy of the new guidelines they were drafting. They also attempted to intimidate me by saying I violated a board member's consent by saying publicly something that they stated to me via their social media page. So they were pretty much asking me to keep it all on the hush hush, and they were pissed that I refused to let them take advantage of me privately the way they had before. I never did get those new guidelines, mostly because it's almost a certainty that they did not draft them. They didn't write that shit because they didn't care, and they still don't care. It doesn't matter that this organization is they've been showing their asses for 2 years almost. They don't care. I want to say 2, but it's been longer than that. It's been 2 years in my experience. They've been showing me their ass. I wasn't even paying attention to the other shit they were doing. It's really easier to just intimidate and dismiss and gaslight someone rather than acknowledge a mistake and correct it. And organizations love playing as if they are weak and unable to make decisions because people who want them to, take a clear stance on a certain topic are less likely to continue to be vocal over a specific course of time. They want you to get tired and to leave. And for me, I refused to do that, even though at the time it was just a terrible, situation for my mental health. I was not feeling good. This was never about, for me at least, it was never about banning my abuser. It was about me being honest about my experience and discussing how hurt I was and how, I wanted others to be aware of his behavior and be safe. And they eventually came back to me with a ban, a full permanent ban that they will review in 5 years. So if you're reviewing it, it's not permanent, it's a 5-year ban. And frankly, I don't care what they do in the 5 years. I got what I needed out of being open, and they just kind of included themselves in a very fucked up way. And when I pointed out that they were being incompetent and hurtful to me, I got told that I was mean. So, weaponized incompetence and gaslighting only serve to allow organizations to get away with essentially painting me as the evil ex-sub who was just angry, and him as a guy who just simply made a couple of mistakes. It really minimizes the extent of the damage the abuse had on me, and it also minimizes the extent of the damage of having a completely unrequested organization come in and completely botch something that you did not ask them to stick their nose into. The org itself never intended to get better with how they handled these issues. They simply wanted people to think they were handling them so they could go away and stop asking them so many questions about it. And when it comes to ways realistically for us to, combat weaponized incompetence, there aren't many. The easiest advice is to walk away from the people who do it, but that's not feasible when you have children with them, or you work with them, or even work for them. One suggestion I've heard is to expect more from that person. Like, they won't, you can't be trusted to do a simple task the first time. That's fine. I'm going to have you do it again. It sounds a little kinky now I say it out loud. You're going to keep doing it until you get it right. And avoid letting them take credit for you correcting their mistake. So you have to be honest with them and acknowledge the level of effort that you see them putting into a situation. So say you're having the same thing with your work colleague again, and it's just like, saying something like, I've been working on troubleshooting this for an hour while I watched you play with your phone. And you said you would help me, so can you do that? Just showing them. And if they double down on that incompetence, you have to remind them that you see how capable they are, and you will not allow them to get past you on that. Again, saying something like, I know that you know how to fix this kind of stuff. This is what you were hired to do, right? Like this is your job? It would be great if you gave me a hand, because I'd really hate to call the boss in here to fix it himself. That sounds a little shitty and a little snitchy, but also you cannot put yourself in a position where other people are, taking advantage of you and your effort. And when it comes to your spouses and loved ones, realistically, you are the only person who gets to decide how much incompetence you can tolerate before it's too much. That's really up to you, your limits, and where your breaking points are, sugar. There isn't really much you can do about another person's intentional incompetence, but protecting your peace should be your highest priority. Well, thank you to everybody who dropped in today to listen to our episode. I'm feeling really grateful for all of the love and support that I've been shown. And I can't wait for the next episode to drop. Next Friday at noon. So please give us a shout on social media and show us our love. Show us some love via our FetLife account, the at the Playpen Pod, and on Instagram at the Playpen Podcast. Also feel free to follow me on both platforms, Dawn Sparkles with an S on Fet and Twitter. Dawn Sparkles with an S on FetLife, Dawn Sparkles with a Z on Twitter and Instagram. And until we meet again, my lovies, have a great week.